Hello, thanks for joining us again today. This is day number 28 of our April devotions, and thank you again for following along with us. We are going to continue our second part of a four-part series. This kind of corresponds with the last 4 days of April, and the title to this particular series is The Effect of the COVID-19 Pandemic on Our Teenagers. And I think it's important here. So I want to quickly get to our reference here, and then I'll bring in some things I think that can kind of help illustrate this. I'm in Isaiah chapter 40, and we're going to begin in verse number 28. Hast thou not known, hast thou not heard, that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary. There is no searching of his understanding. He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth the strength. Now notice this verse here. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Now I realize that what the Lord is speaking here, it can be taken in two different ways, and I think there's a primary emphasis here. One is because especially in the days of the Old Testament, there was a lot of warring going on, and God's people would fight battles, and they would exhaust incredible amounts of strength, and they needed strength to continue that battle, and God was able to give that kind of strength. It's also talking about in the spiritual sense, because Israel not only was going to have a great negative occur when the nation would fall, but it would have an effect upon their attitude and their spiritual outlook. And of course, based on the fact that it was God's judgment upon his own people. But it's interesting here that it talks about even the youths shall faint, and that the young men shall utterly fall. And I'm thinking in these days with this COVID-19 pandemic, particularly the reaction. It's not the physical that I'm concerned with. The young people are not really affected by this, certainly not in relation to the older population. We understand that. The point is, what is going to be, how are they going to judge us, the adults, and how we have responded to this COVID-19 pandemic? How are they going to judge our nation as the government has done what it's done? The state, in our case, the state of North Carolina. How are they going to look back and say, well, how did we do that? How are they going to judge us, right or wrong? Okay, what is going to be their attitude toward it? And I could think when I was a boy growing up, I went to fifth grade. And I remember this because on the first day they brought a lady in, the first day of school of fifth grade, they brought a lady in. And I guess she was like a special speaker. And she wrote on the chalkboard three different words, a phrase. It said, attitude builds altitude. And I thought about that. Okay, didn't quite understand it until she explained it. But she said, basically, you can have a good fifth grade experience or a bad fifth grade experience, and it's basically depends upon your attitude. And so if you have a good attitude, then guess what? You're going to have a good fifth grade. I loved fifth grade. In fact, in fifth grade is where I became captain of the safety patrol. I thought I was something else. I was captain. There's only two captains in the whole program. Every other day you were on one day, off a day, and I was captain of one of my teams. And also on the last day of school, they had field day, and I realized I wasn't the fastest kid in school. It was kind of determined right then. And they gave out, ribbons and awards, and we lined up. I guess they selected the ones, not everybody did this, but they selected the ones they thought were the fastest or demonstrated maybe in a trial who was fast. But I remember we took off, I think it was a 100-yard dash, and I realized that I was not the fastest kid in school. I was second fastest. Greg Green beat me. A good guy, but he beat me. I was second, and I got the red ribbon. But you know what? All through fifth grade, I remember having a good attitude because I liked my teacher. I liked things going on, the learning, all of that. So anyway, had a good attitude, and it helped me soar. Now, when I look at this, Isaiah 40:31 says this, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. So there's that soaring application, that illustration. So here's how I want to help our teenagers. As teenagers, I want you to go through this pandemic experience and get everything you can in the spiritual sense to be one who will soar, despite the reactions, good or bad. If our reactions are what they should be, it'll have that effect upon you. If you look around and say, man, I didn't understand those reactions, and we're judged wrongly for them. And you know what? It'll have its effect upon you. And I'm concerned about that because the COVID-19 pandemic is going to have its greatest reaction on our teenagers, not the physical part of it, but the emotional, the spiritual, the psychological. And I want them to look at us as we do the right thing. We live for God. We don't live in fear. And they see that. And they're going to one day look back and they're going to give illustrations. As I close this little devotional today, what helped me kind of start this is about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, we were getting ready to go to bed. Maybe we were in bed and we're on our phones, looking at messages and different things. And we got a message from a dear family that we pastored up in Iron Mountain, Michigan. And it said that their oldest son was called to preach, and he wanted me to know about that. Now, when we left there, he was only 5, 6 at the oldest. And he wanted me to know that he had been called to preach. So he's now 15, 16 years old. And here's what I thought about that. I thought, here he is, and this his whole life is going to be different based on his decision. And he's going to approach life differently. He's going to be taking in more of the things of God because he's a young preacher. And I thought that's a great positive for a kid at that age. I wasn't that young when I was called to preach. I was young, but not that young. But I was also thinking he's also going through this time in our nation, and he's looking at the reactions. He's looking at the fact that churches are not gathering as they are. And however you want to look at the situation, and of course you can get on Facebook or other outlets and you can see all the different reactions, good and bad, and they're strong. But you know what? We do want to do the right thing. Our young people is going to see these reactions, and they're going to react. They're going to live their life in a large part based on how we've responded. And we want to give them the best example. We want them that when they're faint and things are low in their life, that they can know that they can go to God to get strength, and that God gives strength. And the Bible says even the youths are going to faint and be weary, and the young men is going to utterly fall. That means there's going to be times in our lives where these things happen. But guess what? There's a God who gives strength. There's a God who helps us to soar. So just like when I was in 5th grade, and I decided, I'm going to have a good 5th grade. I'm going to have the right attitude. And when I'm told things to do, I'm going to do them. I'm going to be on good behavior. And I'm going to learn. That was what that whole little pep talk was all about. And that really helped me. I'll be honest with you. Maybe a little surprised I'd give it to 5th graders. I mean, what do we know? We're just, 11, 12-year-olds. But you know what? I remember that. And it had its effect. And I like that. So we want our young people to have a positive effect, even during a time in our country when there are reactions that are not proper. We want to show them the right example so they can look back and say, you know what, we can get strength during a time like this, and we can soar, and we can move on and be what we need to be. So teenagers, we're praying for you. All your churches, all your parents, all your preachers, all your youth pastors are pulling for you, and so are we. So when you look at this time, we want to give the right example, but if we don't, realize that you can go to God and say, God, help me have the right perspective. Decisions. Most decisions are being made for me. I'm making a few, but one day I'll be making all those decisions. So help me during this pandemic to make the right decisions, have the right attitude, despite maybe the wrong attitudes around me. There's some good ones, there's some right ones, but we want to have the right ones. So until tomorrow, as we look at part 3 of the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on our teenagers, we hope you have a wonderful day. And again, think about that. Attitude builds altitude. Have a great day and soar for the Lord today. God bless you.